Welcome, everyone, to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling. I have a very special guest sitting in with me once more, Mr. Martin Popoff, rock writer extraordinaire. And this morning, we are going to be talking about the latest release from Sammy Hagar and The Circle. It's called Crazy Times. Martin, thanks for agreeing to come on here and talk about this new, I call it a Sammy album, The Circle, whatever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. This will be fun.
Well, I was thinking to myself, who am I going to bounce ideas off about this album with? And as if it was a sign, I happened to watch your and Jamie's excellent Contrarians Van Halen "Oh You Hate One Too," where you picked the worst of the Hagar era Van Halen. I thought I'll see if Martin wants to do it. So, yeah. So just really quick, The Circle. I mean, this is Sammy Hagar's, I guess you could say, post Chickenfoot band, even though it's still half with Michael Anthony. The first thing they put out was this live album, At Your Service, which is all Hagar era Van Halen, Sammy solo stuff, a little Montrose, a little Led Zeppelin. The first album,
I love how you pull the albums out of the cloud. That's very modern of you.
Yes, yeah. The first actual album of new material came out in 2019, Space Between. Then they kind of threw out this, they did this Lockdown where they're doing all covers. As a matter of fact, one of the songs they do on here, well, no, should say they're not all covers, but one of the songs they do on here ends up on this new album. And that leads us to the just released Crazy Times. And yeah, there's been a lot of, obviously, there's never not going to be a Van Halen discussion of some sort. So anytime that anybody associated with Van Halen puts out some new product, the inevitable questions come up, and especially where Wolfgang has, made a couple of appearances now doing the Taylor Hawkins tribute and, showing everyone that he can indeed play his dad's guitar licks. But, we're mainly here to talk about this album itself. So Martin, what are your thoughts basically on, I guess, Sammy's post Van Halen? I guess we can take it back there, post Van Halen output.
Yeah, just a reminder as well before we get going. I've definitely got Sammy on the mind because I've been writing these top 20s for Goldmine. And Sammy's birthday is in, I was reminded by this 10/13, which
October
is one of my
13th,
favorite Sammy albums. So in a couple of days, it's his birthday. So I've got a top 20 of the Sammy era Van Halen songs, articles going up on Goldmine on the 13th. But yeah, so in terms of this band, I think this is the best band he's ever had in terms of really having a personality. We know the Sammy Hagar band throughout the years, has been fairly stable, but it evolved and had different members all the time, but sort of different production sounds, different ideas of what he wanted to do. There was Chickenfoot, which I never really warmed to that band. I didn't think there was great chemistry there in terms of writing. I never felt there was a personality to that band. To me, it seemed like a little bit of a DLR, David Lee Roth band. I was going to say DLR band, but that's a whole separate thing. David Lee Roth. It reminded me a little bit of that and a little bit faintly trying to be Van Halen, but it just, there was just something non-communicative about the writing in that band. I think this band, I love the way, and Space Between is the same thing. So it's no fluke. It's not that he's being, schizophrenic with this band and making changes all over the place. I think you have a very, a distinct personality to this band. And Jason Bonham is one of my favorite drummers of all time, I think, and you get a whole different side of him here. You get that little more rootsier, light touch, finesse sort of thing. I don't want to say kind of a Brian Downey light touch, but it kind of leans a little bit that way. And for that matter, it leans a little bit towards a Bob Ezrin type, modern day Deep Purple production, a little bit in there. But I guess what I mean about the production is that also is part of the personality. There's a really sort of feathery, trebly, cymbally, sort of sound to this band. I think Vic Johnson's an amazing guitarist in here. He's perfect for this as well. So him and Jason are both kind of doing that hard roots rock thing or heavy new country thing a little bit at times, because this bleeds into the blues quite a bit, I think. And Mikey's right in there as well, participating. And Sammy has always sort of flirted with this whole thing. I've always felt that I've always been frustrated with him as a metalhead, with his I almost think that the correct way to look at Sammy through all those years is like a heavy Bryan Adams or a heavy John Mellencamp. He's a songwriter, a roots rocker. He seems like a Midwest guy, even though he's kind of not. So I think he's always had that in him as well, and we've seen that through the Wabaritas material as well, and then that super acoustic album. What the heck was it called?
Oh, Light Roast.
No, the other one where he's on the beach.
Yeah, living it up.
Yeah. So I think there's 10% of living it up on this album as well. I feel. So yeah, I think just in a general sense, this is a band with a really cool personality. They've really hit on something here. I loved when Sammy would often say, as much as he's, passive aggressive and getting in his digs about Van Halen, I loved when he would say, I did not quit that band. I was fired by that band. That I would never quit that band. Van Halen was the best band in the world. And so I think here he's really, come across a really cool band chemistry that I hope on future albums by this band, they keep to this mandate. And if they go off this mandate, he should call it something else, kind of thing. But I think he's got a really cool thing going here. And I don't know, do you want me to talk about a few of the first few songs, or?
Yeah, we could go through the songs. Yeah, I just wanted to say something really quick.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you brought this up about the production and about the whole roots rock thing. I had read that he had wanted to make this kind of a roots rock Americana album, but the producer Dave Cobb kind of talked him out of it. And God bless you, Dave Cobb, because in my opinion, we don't need any more of that crap. We don't need any more living it up. We don't need any more Light Roast. Even that Sammy Hagar and Friends album, I don't. And I've written about this different. I don't want contemplative sitting by the beach Sammy at this point in time for new material. I want that guy to rock hard, and he does that on several occasions on this album. And I think he sounds, really, really good for a 74-year-old man, at least captured in the studio. And live, I think he kind of gets by. So yeah, if you want to get into the songwriting, I just, for one, I'm glad that there's some hard rockers on here and it wasn't a boring acoustic thing. Because it could.
Yeah, I'll respond to that and push back a little bit. I mean, first off, two things I want to respond to. Yeah, he's sounding great. I love the fact that he's singing amazing on here, and he sounds perfectly natural, and it doesn't sound like it had to be built on on a computer, on a studio, kind of like what we're seeing in that whole Ozzy Osbourne situation, and many other bands that are going to have to not do they're going to have to really treat the stuff. I'm thinking of David Coverdale, how really, if you just put David Coverdale in a situation like this, it's still going to need a little bit of cleaning up in the studio. And I'm trying to think of who Lemmy was a good example of this in later years, where you could actually even in the studio, you could hear that the voice had changed and it had aged. And I don't think you really hear that from Sammy here. I think he sounds amazing. Yeah. I will push back on the hard rock thing, because I think what I feel about this record is the personality is so strong. It's not like there are songs that are produced like hard rock and hair metal that you would actually get from the Wabaritas, and you would get, pure, no nonsense, fuzz pedal on the guitar, power chord sort of thing. So when they rock out on here, it's more of a rock out of energy and activity, but I think they still, beautifully pull back on giving you heavy metal production. So, but you're right. I mean, there's a lot of songs. It's almost like there are a lot of songs on here that are written heavy, but they're recorded at sort of a lower relaxed hum of 85%. And they could have been recorded a different way and they would come out like heavy or like hard rock songs, not exactly heavy metal, but yeah. So just to mention, I guess the first half, just to go through a little bit of it. So there's the intro. I don't like these intros. I don't think they should ever be named, but there is one called in the beginning of the end, minute 50. And you're right. I mean, this is in that contemplative, we don't need Sammy sitting on top of a mountain, spewing wisdoms sort of thing. But he's lived a very interesting life. So it's kind of cool in a way as well. But okay, so then we're into Slow Drain. My notes say like dreamy psychedelic intro, cool, huge sound, boomy blues, roots rock, cool, dark country rock in a way. So this is a bit that way. Sammy's vocals are, pretty gritty on it. Beautiful textures. So I think this one is dark enough that it doesn't sound, I hate saying new country or country, but there is that vibe because of the bleeding into the blues. Feed Your Head, bluesy as well. I don't like this kind of song structure. I never did. To me, there's better chord changes later on in the song, but I don't like this sort of sing-songy. You get it in the blues sometimes. Great light touch from Jason Bonham, my notes say as well. So then we go into Pump It Up, and again, same sort of thing. Pump It Up and Feed Your Head share in common that sing-songy children's music sort of melody thing that annoys me after a while. I Pump It Up is not one of my favorite Elvis Costello songs. I think there were so many other things they could have done. Of course, we know Exodus covered this song and got a lot of heck for it when they put it on Force of Habit. Right. So we had a thrash band do this song. So yeah, this is, and right in that same vein, Mass Tequila is, that's what I mean by super annoying. Gary Glitter, Rock and Roll Part 2. I can't stand that sing-songy, bad hooky sort of melody. And I think Pump It Up and Feed Your Head both bother me in that way. Be Still, now we're into the true Sammy folk, acoustic sort of thing. And again, when he does this, when you see my top 20 Sammy Hagar list, I've got Why Can't This Be Love on there, but no other ballads. And I find Sammy, and he was like this in the studio or in his solo career as well. I find there's that maudlin sort of Aerosmith vibe to the chord changes and melodies. So my notes say a bit maudlin, right? So, you can do mellow music and, okay. I again, my list of top 20s have a couple of things on there where Van Halen was mellow with Sammy, but it's not like this, but oftentimes they are. So that I found a little bit that way. I'll stop at the next track. You Get What You Pay For. Love this one. Sleazy party rock sort of vibe to it. Great drums. It's poppy. But it's cool. So I do love that they're in this, like I say, this weird, active, energetic hard rock zone, but it's never recorded that way. So it comes out super distinct. I'll stop there.
Cool. So yeah, so my thoughts are, I really like the production. I'm glad they didn't go over the top with the production with, making it. There was never going to be a mandate to make it sound hard rock anyway. Sammy just doesn't think like that. And it's almost like it happens by accident. And you can go all the way back to the first Montrose album, retroactively, Sammy likes to say, oh yeah, we were the first American heavy metal band, but he wouldn't, he's not a heavy metal guy. He's a little bit too upbeat for that. Right. He just happens to have a good voice for it when he's in that, mindset. Yeah, the intro again, contemplative Sammy, don't need it, don't want it, whatever. It just kind of goes by. Liked Slow Drain a lot. I think that this is the most, it's so tempting with Jason Bonham to, sort of put your, where's the Zepp? This is the only one where I really hear a sort of Zeppelin-ish groove. I think it's kind of an unusual riff, kind of a cascading, arpeggiated thing. I kind of dig that. Feed Your Head, I wrote down a couple things, but Feed Your Head, when I hear that expression, I always think White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane. All this has nothing to do with that. But if you listen to that chorus, it sounds like Touch Too Much by AC/DC. It's like, da, 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 da. You could sing Touch Too Much over it, which I'm sure is not intentional. They're just, it's not that they're particularly AC/DC-ish chords. It just so happens that it's going in that sort of direction. Now, Pump It Up, I really don't know a lot about Elvis Costello. This is probably his, to the uninitiated, it's probably his calling card song. Buck Cherry did a version of it too. I like it. I think that they remain true to the guts of the song, but there is something, it loses that new wave-ish quirkiness to it. I have to wonder though if obviously a lot of people heard this song back when it came out, but I have to wonder if this is something that Sammy brought from recording in England in the late 70s around this time, doing like musical chairs and the self-titled. I wonder if this is something he heard a lot over there and kind of stuck with him. Yeah, Be Still. Be Still is more contemplative. It's more, where eagles fly. It's him sitting with a tequila and just strumming a guitar. And it really, it does pick up a little bit of all the contemplative stuff on here. At least this one picks up a little bit. And yeah, I really like You Get What You Paid For. That's the type of rock and roll I want to hear from Sammy at this point in time. And I'm glad they captured, a fair bit of it on this album.
Cool. All right. Well, just to close out the album, I'll just run through Crazy Times. I love this one. Kind of a cool 60s vibe to it. It's got a little bit of that guitar singing with the vocal in unison thing that you get from Jimi Hendrix. I thought this was a good one. And, this is the title track. They did a cool looking, smart, expensive enough video for it. And there's actually videos for that one, Funky Feng Shui and Pump It Up, and they're all kind of similar. They're it's the band sort of in front of, I guess, green screen you would call it, and playing live and stuff going on around them, which is kind of neat. And speaking of Funky Feng Shui, that's the next one, and I love this song. This is that very funky party metal thing that Sammy's done well, and they did well at times in Van Halen as well. I think there's really cool band chemistry on this one, and it bleeds into the whole Jimmy Buffett Wabaritas vibe of Sammy, so it fits with the other components of his personality as well. But yeah, I think that was a very smart one to have as a quote unquote single and video. Father Time, we're back to. Again, my notes say a bit maudlin. I just don't like the chord changes. It reminds me of Song Doctor Aerosmith a little bit, and I just wish, I wish when he did the mellow songs, maybe without drums, the acoustic, that they were a little darker and more sophisticated of chord changes. I would like to see him do, yeah, and that's another way of being contemplative. I mean, he was contemplative now and again with Van Halen. I think it usually worked out pretty good when he was. And Childhood's End is one of my favorite ones on here as well. This has got like a 3/4 groove. Sometimes people call that a waltz groove, but yeah, it's a different groove. I think it's the most non-roots rock song on it. It's heavy, it's serious, it's psychedelic. So I think this is a cool, ambitious one on the album. 2120, with a title like that, you would think maybe it was going to be an instrumental, but it wasn't. This is probably even the heaviest song on it. But again, it's in a unique zone to this band, and slash hair metal, I would say. But it's got like a psychedelic pop feel. Again, for some reason, it reminded me of Saigon Kick. And then we end up with Father Time acoustic. I really don't like when bands do that, the doubling up on a song and here's the acoustic version, because all of us yappers have to now say, well, it has 11 and a half songs on it, or we have to explain that it's done again, and why bother. And it's not like there's a lot of songs on this album either. They're to double up on a song. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a throwaway. But and that's the thing, that's the word we always use when this happens, right? But there you go. But all told, I think it's a good solid album, long enough but not too long. It's long enough that we don't have to bring out the dreaded word EP like we unfortunately have to bring out for the latest Cult album. Ticks me off when that happens. They just put out an 8-song 35-minute album, I think it is. But yeah, there you go. That's my feel. I think this is a really, really good, strong album.
So we'll start off with the title song, Crazy Times. Now, it's funny. We both like this song. I really liked it. I actually really liked Chickenfoot. And this reminds me of something from the first Chickenfoot album. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because it's got that chugga 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 thing. going on, but I really like it. I think it's maybe the smartest song on here. Not that we're looking for smarts per se, but no, I really liked it. Funky Feng Shui, that's the song that they did on the Lockdown album. You know, it's kind of, it reminds me a little bit. I first off, I do like it, but it kind of reminds me of when Rush would talk about their instrumentals in the early 90s. They're talking about funky. They couldn't be funky if their lives depended on it. They're just not going to be funky. And Sammy thinks he's funky, but he can't be funky. He's Sammy. But it's fun either way. So, you know, you take the KY off and you get fun. Yeah, it's fun. If that's how he wants to describe
Sammy's
it.
chunky. I look at him and I think chunky, even though he's not, you know, overweight. God love him. He's in great shape. He's got a lot of energy, but I look at that guy up there and he looks like a welding bench.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it's because of the way he dresses or what, but yeah, he always looks like he's bigger than he actually is.
Yeah.
Father Time. Well, okay. So he had a song on, I think it was that Living It Up album, which I really don't like at all. I don't think I like one single song on that. I think he had a song in there called Father's Son, S-U-N. Or maybe it was the one after that, Cosmic Universal Fashion, which
Yeah,
was
I
only
did
out
not
like
like that album.
which
Man,
was
I
out like
wanted to like that album. I did not like that album.
that album kind of came and went quick because I think within the year the Chicken Foot thing happened, which actually went gold, surprisingly. So yeah, that one to me is kind of a throwaway. I do like how Childhood's End picks up because it is a continuation from the intro. And this is something he's done before because he did it back on Danger Zone. And you talk about an acoustic song that's dark, the song The Danger Zone, the very last track on that album, that's acoustic, but it's dark. It's interesting when he delves into that a little bit, and it doesn't happen very often. Now, this is the crazy thing. This is just the version I bought. That's all I got. I got a 10-song album. So I've got to go look on YouTube and listen to 2120. When you started to mention, I'm like, what are you talking about? This is the version I've got. It's just got the 10 tracks on it. So
Yeah.
I definitely have to check that out. I hate that. I wish that they would, you know, give us everything you got. And then if you want to throw in live songs or whatever, or acoustic songs, do that later. But anyway, that's kind of funny.
Yeah, I was checking this out on Spotify, and that always really annoys me about Spotify, that you don't know where the album ends.
That's right.
And it just continues on, and you get more tracks and more tracks, and it's like, yeah, well, where was the official album?
Where does it actually end? Well, it actually ends with Childhood's End,
right?
Based on the, and I don't in this day and age, I don't even know why they do that anymore, because there's no casual fans are going to buy this. The only people that are going to buy this are people like me that have bought pretty much everything else with Sammy's name on it. But anyway, a good album, well produced. Dave Cobb, you know, does an adequate job with it. A couple other things, and it kind of gets into Van Halen territory. Sammy's one of my favorite rock and rollers ever. He's one of my favorite vocalists ever. But sometimes I read interviews with him, and it's like, man, he says too many things sometimes. He says some kooky things sometimes, and you've interviewed him. I'm sure you found that. But one of the things that made the rounds this time around is that he dreamt up this song that he was going to credit Eddie Van Halen on it. And because it sounded so much like a Van Halen song. And I'm just, you know, like, whoa, why would you even say that? I'm happy to say, unless 2120 is the song, none of the songs on here have an Eddie Van Halen songwriting credit. Because I'm like, you can't really do that, can you? You can't really just credit someone. Like, I understand on the Space Between album, they had that song Trust Fund Baby, which they basically took the riff from I've Got the Fire and wrote a new song about it. So they credited Ronnie Montrose. That's perfect. You know, that's as it should be. That's like a sample almost. But yeah,
that's a pretty neat idea, though, if you think about it. I mean, just for the reason you just said, no one's ever done that before. So I think that's pretty funny.
I'm just wondering about the legalities of it. Like, if the estate can say you can't say somebody co-wrote something if they did. I don't know. It's
but you know, the funny thing, Tim, is that on the flip side, legally you have to in certain ways, like if they had a song on here that without him even knowing sounded like an old Van Halen song, and he's not aware of it or whatever, that's true. He would push back and say, no, I wrote that song. That's normally what happens. But the Van Halen estate could come back and say, no, that is too much like And the Cradle Will Rock.
That's very true.
We insist you credit Eddie. or you're going to get sued, right? So it's kind of funny that there's the two ways you could do it. He could consciously write a song that is based on a Van Halen song, like when people say traditional or whatever, like give credit because you know it's a lot like an old song, or yeah, there's this funny idea that Sammy had, which is cool. And like I say, in the other way that it's normally done is the estate could actually be the ones to say, you better credit Eddie because it sounds like X song.
That, you know what, I never thought about that before. It
Yeah.
could almost be of a heading off at the past type of thing,
Yeah.
where the estate, Alex, whoever it is that oversees it, hears that and goes, hey, that was based on, it could be something that he forgot was a riff he heard Eddie play once in the studio, that's something that never came out. So they go to say, well, we're going to sue him for this, and then they look and go, oh, he already credited Eddie. I guess we don't have, we've got nothing to, it disarms them, so to speak. So it's almost like settling out of court long before you go to court.
Yeah.
And as far as the Van Halen discussions go, I mean, I enjoy seeing, Wolfgang plays really, really well. Honestly, I wish I could get into that WVH album, the MAM. I wish I liked it. It just sounds like generic modern rock to me. But he's a good kid. I think he's done a fantastic job of honoring his father's legacy. I personally don't care about any Van Halen reunions. I'm kind of tired of hearing about it. I want to hear the unreleased stuff. I don't care about sending them out on tour with either Wolfgang or Satriani or Steve Lukather on guitar, or Sammy and or Dave, whatever. I want to hear an album of Dave in the Van Halen. I want to hear a Sammy album. Just start pumping them out. We know the songs are there. I mean, even after this day and age, just as we're recording this, I see Queen have unearthed an unreleased song with Freddie from the Miracle Sessions. Like, the stuff's there, and we know famously Eddie's got a ton of this stuff. So work it up, make songs out of it. It's bound to be decent. There's bound to be half a good album, no matter which side of the fence that you land on. I guess that's kind of my take on that. I mean, every time Sammy comes out with something, that people are going to ask him about Van Halen, because Sammy loves to talk, and people asking, they're going to get a quote from him. It's going to be the one thing that gets picked up on for the headline. But as it stands, this is as decent an album as I could have expected. I think, the few times I've listened to it, I think I prefer it to the Space Between. Not that I thought that was all that bad. But you should like the newer stuff better. I hope that, denotes some sort of progression. I have always thought that Sammy works best in context of an actual band. And even though he would say Sammy and the Wabaritas, to me, that's just something to, on Discogs, when you're looking to add albums to your collection, why can't I find these under Sammy Hagar? Well, they're Sammy Hagar albums, and it's kind of annoying for that reason. I think Sammy's always worked best within the context of a band, even though he's put out a lot of solo albums I like too. This is somewhere in between. I file this under Sammy Hagar, but it is kind of its own thing, because I think left to his own devices, we'd have a 10-song album that was mellow and contemplative, maybe one more of a rocking song, and like you said, it might be more of that new country thing. So hey, I'm happy to hear new music from one of my favorite classic artists, and a good half of it is quite good.
Yeah, absolutely. Total agreement with you on all that.
So Martin, I'll give you a chance to plug what you've got going on right now, but I know you've written Van Halen books. Have you ever thought, and you've written a Montrose book, have you ever thought about doing a book just on Sammy's solo career?
That's an interesting question, because I am in email contact with Sammy on various things. And, I almost feel I've almost thought that I could approach him and say, look, this book's never going to happen unless we do it. I think it almost feels like he's done the best-selling, really well done, super entertaining autobiography. This would be more of an academic one. And, the business sense, or the business mind of Sammy knows that it's not going to sell it as many copies, but wouldn't it be nice for your legacy to put out there a book where we go over every single song of your solo catalog and just put them, chapter, and do that sort of thing. So that would be a pretty cool thing to do. It's something I've had in the back of my mind. I bet if I approached him about it, he'd say, yeah, let's do it, or whatever, because all I'd say to him is, look, you just got to talk to me for 20 hours.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do. And then we just put it together, and then I give it back to you and you check it and change a few things or whatever. So, yeah, I could see doing that. And like I say, to me, it's almost like this is something to pass down in rock history and to your family, that this is out there. And, this has all come up because, eventually I don't know exactly where it's at right now, but, we did the Bill Electric Church book, right? Which was going through all those records. So I've kind of done this exercise, but the whole time I'm doing this with Bill, I'm thinking, what would Sammy say? What would Sammy say?
Yeah.
On this one, right? So, but yeah, people ask me about a Michael Schenker book and whatever, and in some cases I say, look, we've already got all the good comedy gold stuck in the 2 UFO books and the UFO visual biography. And now Sammy, I've got all his great Montrose stuff in the Montrose book. I've got the 2 Van Halen books, Unchained, a Van Halen user manual, and Van Halen, a visual history biography, whatever it's called. And so I've already talked to Sammy all about Van Halen stuff, and it's all in those books. So, part of me says, I've already done the greatest hits, at least for what I have on my end, but that stuff should be put into history in some way. And like I say, it came up because of the Bill Electric Church experience.
I'd love to, yeah, no one ever talks, I'd love to hear him go into Street Machine or Free Lock Box or Marching to Mars. There's a market out there for it. I know I'd be interested in a book like that for sure. So,
well, and along the way, I have asked him about 3 or 4 of those studio albums along the way. And I even went back and at one point, remember the old days, I did those Ye Old Metal essays, which you can get at 99 cents on Zunior, and you can get the full books there, but the books are out of print. I think I just got 1979 left at this point. But anyways, so I would do these in the old days, I would do these standalone chapters on certain albums, thinking I'm never going to do a book on them. Turns out many of them I did do books on, but I remember one interview a long time ago, I did have him go through Street Machine, right? And the stories are usually pretty darn good, and then combined with what Bill Church said, not that I can use any of that or would, but yeah, that would be a cool academic book that we don't really have out there from Sammy.
Yeah, there's, other than his own autobiography, yeah, there isn't a Sammy Hagar book. So yeah, I would highly recommend that. Other than that, what books, what are your current projects, Martin? Where can people, get them? I know that's, martinpopoff.com, but what have you got on the go right now that you're particularly psyched about?
Yeah, the latest stuff that came in was my favorite book I've ever done, which is Lively Arts, The Damned Deconstructed, where I went through every single song by The Damned, the same way I did it with The Clash and Led Zeppelin. But it's just a small black and white trade paperback. But the writing is my favorite book of all time. And then we took my old Alice Cooper book and cracked that into 2 small, again, black and white trade paperbacks, and expanded them and did a re-edit and stuff. So I've got just in is Easy Action, Alice Cooper, the original Alice Cooper band, and Feed My Frankenstein, Alice Cooper, the solo years. And then I shouldn't mention the ones that aren't announced yet, but through Quarto, we had that Bowie at 75 book, big lush, in a plastic book, box and all that sort of thing. But I've got AC/DC at 50 coming out through Quarto, so that will be a big hardcover coffee table book as well. 50 AC/DC career highlights. And the other one that was announced, so there's 2 not announced. Oh yeah, a Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon 50th anniversary book.
Cool. So yeah, martinpopoff.com. That's where you go to find these. You can get them signed. You'll find Martin on Sea of Tranquility, the Contrarians, of course. We've got some Contrarian stuff coming up. Always fun to debate. And yeah, so that's our take on Sammy Hagar and the Circle. Crazy times. Interested to know what you folks out there think of it. And Martin, thank you very much for sitting in today.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks everyone for watching this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions.